here. Governor and Treasurer are on screen, and we have a voluminous agenda with a number of things on it. We're going to start with the consent agenda, and just a reminder of how we're going to use the consent agenda today in its traditional form. So we're going to hear all of the items and then take one vote to approve them all, unless the governor or the treasurer object. That will help with our efficiency, and it's not something that requires a lot of debate, any of the individual items, unless the governor or treasurer feel that way. So, Madam Director, if you wouldn't mind explaining the items on the consent agenda, please.
Thank you, Chair Reed. Good morning, Treasurer Steiner, Governor Kotek. Today, there are 4 items on the consent agenda. The first are your minutes from last month, or last land board meeting on April 14th, as well as 3 easements for bridges over on the coast. These are existing bridges. It's very straightforward. The easements are really cleaning up the record. Easements are no cost because they are public infrastructure. And these are simply creating the transfer and the record of those easements. So with that, if you'd like to vote on all 4 items at once, we'll do a single motion.
Thank you, Madam Director. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I move the land board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Treasurer Steiner moves approval of the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I second.
Governor Kotek seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, any objections? Seeing none, the motion is approved and the consent agenda is complete. Very efficient. Thank you, colleagues. We'll move on to item number 5 already. First of our action items, Madam Director.
Yes, excuse me. Move so quickly, I have to get the right page. Thank you, Secretary Reed. This action item is in the regards of a sale of 80 acres of state-owned forest lands in Coos County to the South Slough National Estuary Research Reserve. We're transferring it from the Common School Fund to the South Slough. And our Deputy Director of Land Management, Chris Castelli, will walk you through this item, and I will conclude the presentation with a few remarks.
Thank you, Madam Director. Mr. Castelli, thank you.
Good morning, Secretary Reed, Treasurer Steiner, and Governor Kotek. For the record, my name is Chris Castelli, and I'm the Deputy Director of Land Management here at the Department of State Lands. Joining us today, I believe, is South Slough Manager Patricia Fox, if she's online. And then in the building is our real property specialist, Brian Cochran, from our Bend office. Him and another colleague made it over today. So the subject of this agenda item is the sale of state-owned forest lands in Coos County and whether the land board should approve the sale of 80 acres roughly of state-owned forest land to the South Slough National Estuary Research Reserve. And you can see a map of that property on the screen there. Thank you, Ted. The authorities are outlined in your agenda item memo, statutory, constitutional, and administrative rule. Since 2022, the reserve has pursued the acquisition of the 80-acre Winchester upland property adjacent to the reserve's 7,000-acre site on Oregon's southern coast. Overseen by the department and managed for long-term research, education, recreation, and conservation, the reserve is uniquely positioned to manage this property of a late-stage successional forest habitat. The Winchester upland property encompasses the headwaters of Toms and Cox Creek, both of which are tributaries to Winchester Creek, the main waterway of South Slough. Bordered by the reserve on 2 sides, acquisition of these forest lands will expand the footprint and connectivity of lands and waters protected under reserve management. Land management within the reserve focuses on protection and quality of native habitat for fish and bird species, including marble murrelets, which ODFW has designated as endangered under the Oregon Endangered Species Act and are federally protected as threatened under the Federal Endangered Species Act. This proposed transaction advances the department's strategic goals by generating revenue for the Common School Fund, supporting a thriving Oregon through habitat restoration and resilience, and expanding opportunities for research and stewardship at the reserve. And you've seen our annual reports over the years, and recently they do a great job with stewardship, research, and of course, education in that community and water. On December 12th, 2023, the Land Board authorized due diligence and funding efforts for the transfer. While due diligence was underway, staff continued to work to secure outside funding. In 2025, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration awarded a grant of $834,000. The award fully funds the purchase and transfer of the Winchester property from its constitutional dedication to the Common School Fund to the reserve, along with some due diligence and closing expenses. Following the board's authorization in 2023, the department completed all required statutory and administrative steps, including public notice and comment period, cultural resource assessment, boundary survey, land appraisal, and other due diligence and internal review steps. The land evaluation form is in the packet. The appraised value of the property and associated timber is $780,000. On December 3rd, 2025, the board approved the decertification of the property from Oregon Department of Forestry Management. You'll hear more from ODF later today, but this was listed as common school forest lands before. And you might remember that meeting because I think you were all here, December 3rd, 2025. This was actually the intact board. ODF's Board of Forestry met on January 7th, 2026, and agreed to this decision and removed the property from common school forest lands designation. We have a split mineral estate, so the department's also been working to extinguish inactive split estates reserved in 1953 on these 80 acres and an additional 347 acres of land within the reserve since we were tackling this process already. This work will further protect the property and habitat. While related, this effort is separate from the acquisition and does not affect the completion of the current transaction. And my understanding is this process has played out, and Brian can talk more to it if you have questions about the subsurface estate. The proposed transaction was discussed at public meetings of the South Slough Reserve Commission on June 7th and September 27th of 2023, where it received support. The department held a public comment period from June 17th to July 17th, 2025 on the proposed acquisition. We did receive a comment from the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs, deferring to local tribes and their input and comments. The reserve operates under a co-stewardship model with the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians, the Coquille Indian Tribe, and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians, which will guide management of this acquisition. The Department of Fish and Wildlife submitted a letter describing habitat values of the property, but remained neutral on the transaction. If approved, the department will proceed to closing, ensure receipt of funds to the Common School Fund, and transfer management of the property to the reserve in August of this year. So with that, the recommendation is that the department recommends that the Land Board approve the sale of 80 acres of state-owned forest lands to the reserve for $780,000.
Madam Director?
Thank you, Chris. The department did receive one piece of written testimony for this item. They did not receive any no one signed up to provide spoken testimony. The written testimony was provided to the Land Board, and the Land Board will be available on the webpage at oregon.gov/DSL. But I do want to provide one point of clarification on that testimony regarding the property appraisal. The appraisal referenced in that testimony was an earlier appraisal. DSL's forester reviewed this earlier appraisal, and the real property staff procured an updated appraisal that was also reviewed by the DSL forester. This updated appraisal is the one in the packet for this item, and it did increase the appraised value by $35,000. That is the sale price. This concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Madam Director. Are there questions? I can see the governor, but I cannot see the treasurer. So, Madam Treasurer, if you have a question, let us know, or any comments.
No, thank you.
Okay, now I can see you. Thank you both. Okay, if there is no discussion or any questions, I'd be interested in a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the Land Board approve the sale of 80 acres of state-owned forest lands to South Slough Reserve for $780,000.
Thank you. Treasurer Steiner moves approval of the recommendation on the sale of property. Is there a second?
Second.
Governor Kotek seconds. Is there any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, are there any objections to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is approved and the sale can proceed. Thank you. Move on to item number 6, Madam Director.
Item number 6. Thank you, Secretary Reed. This action item is in regard to the sale of 65 acres of filled land on Hayden Island in Multnomah County to the Oregon Department of Transportation. And once again, Deputy Director Chris Castelli, our Deputy Director of Land Management, will walk you through this item, and I will wrap up with a few remarks.
Good.
If you don't mind, Director Lovell and Secretary Reed, I think this might be one I want to call Bill Warnicki and John Gessner just to sit up here in case there are questions on.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes. So once again, Mr. Secretary, Governor Kotek, Treasurer Steiner, for the record, I'm Chris Castelli, Deputy Director of the Land Management Division, and joining us at the table in case there are any questions are ODOT's Bill Warnicki, who is the Interstate Bridge Program Manager, and John Gessner, the Department of State Lands Real Property Land Transaction Specialist. Also joining us from Bend, him and Brian carpooled over today. So the issue for agenda item 6 is whether the State Land Board should approve the sale of approximately 65 acres of filled lands on Hayden Island in Multnomah County to the Department of Transportation. The constitutional, statutory authorities and administrative rules are referenced, and our asset management plan are referenced in the authority section of your memo. Hayden Island is located west of I-5 Bridge near the Oregon-Washington border and within the channel of the Columbia River. Since statehood, Hayden Island has been altered by fill, accretion, and erosion. The highly developed eastern side of the island is within the city limits of Portland. In contrast, the largely undeveloped western side of the island, sometimes commonly known as Western Hayden Island or West Hayden Island, is outside of the city of Portland, but still within the city's urban growth boundary. The side of the island west of the railroad tracks is subject to the city's comprehensive plan designations. There is, however, interest in preserving the land as open space. The site proposed for sale is on the south shore of the western side, where there are formerly submerged and submersible lands, now filled. And Mr. Secretary, I know you've been here and probably seen multiple actions with the port and other conversations with regards to West Hayden Island over the years. Known as the South Shore lands is what this property is known as. These are owned and managed by the department. The current zoning for the South Shore lands is multiple use forest, which generally can be used for timber, agriculture, conservation, recreation, hazard mitigation, and compatible associated uses. These lands are currently undeveloped, bare lands, or open space. In 2023 through 2025, the department worked with the Port of Portland to clarify title on several parcels of land owned by both parties on the west side of Hayden Island. This effort clarified property line ownership and access uncertainties that had existed for several decades, and the agreement was finalized in April 2025. Concurrent with this effort to clear title, on November 12th, 2024, ODOT submitted an application to the department to purchase the South Shore lands. The proposed land transaction is part of ODOT's involvement in the Interstate Bridge Group and their work to replace the I-5 bridge over the Columbia River. Per the due diligence summary report, which is in your packet, prepared by the IBR the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, the sale will accomplish implementing a conservation easement for the city of Portland for environmental zone impacts associated with the construction package, an agreement with ODF&W for aquatic resource impacts, and future permittee responsible mitigation through restoration enhancement projects for future phases of the IBR program. The Land Board approved the department to begin due diligence steps on their February 11th, 2025 meeting. The department completed all required statutory and administrative steps, including public notice and comment period, cultural resource assessment, resurvey, land appraisal, and other due diligence and internal review steps. An appraisal was ordered by ODOT, which is in the packet, and the value of the land was determined to be $1.3 million. DSL commissioned an outside review of value, and the review appraiser concluded that this was a fair value, and that's also in the packet. Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental reviews for potential contamination were commissioned by ODOT, and the department noted no concerns that would prevent the acquisition of the property. ODOT assessed any potential archaeological resources. The report noted no known resources and the presence of archaeological deposits is unlikely. This was just remembering this is filled lands that were created by dredge spoils being deposited. DSL received a request from the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde regarding information on cultural investigations on the site. This request was provided to the department, DSL's archaeologist. As part of their due diligence, ODOT completed an archaeological resource assessment, which is discussed in the attached summary report. The department circulated the application to purchase the land for a 45-day public comment period from March 5th to April 19th, 2025. In total, there were 12 comments received. 5 were in favor of the bridge and or restoration effort. 4 were against the sale of the site or construction of the bridge. More generally, with 1 comment specifically wanting West Hayden Island area to be reopened for commercial development. We received the 1 comment from the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. 1 comment was unclear regarding support of the sale, and 1 comment was against the lack of access to the site. 2 items remain to be completed before closing. Should we move forward today? Designation of the property as a legal lot of record. An application is in with the City of Portland regarding a lot line adjustment. The execution of a purchase and sale agreement with the purchaser, ODOT. The state of Oregon acquired the property at statehood and was later expanded through fill. As a result, it was never formally designated as a legal lot. This process is typically handled by the county, and an intergovernmental agreement between Multnomah County and the City of Portland assigns jurisdiction to the city. The department is requesting that the land board approve the sale contingent on completion of that designation. And a draft purchase and sale agreement is included as an appendix. You can see what that looks like. Should we go forward with completing this transaction or approving it today? So with that, the department recommends the land board authorize completion of the sale of the South Shore property on Hayden Island in Multnomah County to ODOT for a price of $1.3 million, contingent upon completion of a legal lot of record for the property.
And
Thank you, Chris. Just a few additional thoughts. First, I want to appreciate the Confederated Tribe of the Grand Ronde's engagement regarding the sale of this property and thank ODOT for providing the West Hayden Island Historic Built Environment and Archaeological Due Diligence reports to all of the consulting tribes, 10 tribes, I believe, on the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, as well as discussing the due diligence work in many consultation meetings. Though some specifics of the due diligence details cannot be publicly shared to ensure resource protection, as noted in the summary report attached to this item, the assessments identified no known archaeological resources and determined that the presence of archaeological deposits within the parcel boundaries were highly unlikely. I also want to emphasize that the purchase parcels will be used to satisfy the City of Portland and ODFW's mitigation requirements for the bridge, and that future mitigation may be satisfied through the restoration and enhancement of this parcel. This sale has no connection to the dredge disposal material or any disposition of Port of Portland's portion of the property. And I'll wrap up the testimony by noting that we did not have anybody signed up to testify on this item, but we did receive 1 written testimony, which was similar to the previous item, and indicated that the submitter indicated that the testimony applied to both items. Again, appreciate the opportunity to be clear regarding the appraisal for these filled lands. As noted in Chris's remarks, ODOT requested the appraisal for this property. It was reviewed by DSL, and we did order a review appraisal that agreed with ODOT's determination of the sale price. With that, we are happy to answer any questions you may have for us or for Mr. Warnicki.
thank you very much. Governor, Madam Treasurer, any questions from either of you?
No, thank you.
Okay. The camera is moving back and forth. I guess I have just a couple. I would love to hear a little more color on the public testimony that you referenced throughout. A little bit more about what themes you took from that, or any additional analysis we might benefit from.
Sure. The nature of the testimony was really about the methodology that DSL uses to order and review appraisals. And this, in both of these instances.
Sorry, Madam Director, I didn't mean to refer
Okay.
just that one, but sort of the whole.
Overall, oh, I see, on this item. Thank you for that clarification. We did receive a number of comments on this particular item, 4 of which were, let me get the numbers straight here, 5 of which were in favor of the bridge and the restoration effort. There has long been a movement to protect this island as part of open space, and this particular sale is considered a piece of that overall vision. 4 of them were against the sale of the site, generally based on the construction of the bridge overall, specifically wanting the West Hayden Island area. One of them in particular wanted the West Hayden Island area, this 65 acres open for development. We also noted that we did receive the one piece of comment from the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, which the ODOT went through extensive consultation and review for. And then we had 2 that were stood out, at one being unclear on the support of the sale and the other one really wanting more public access at this particular location.
Thank you. And based on that, I think just for the benefit of the public and others who might be listening, that want to make sure that my understanding here is correct. The effect of this sale would be to preserve that land. I think I've heard you use the word about mitigation, restoration, and enhancement. That proceeds independently of whatever other feelings people have about the bridge. The effect here is that land is preserved. I have that right?
Yes, I believe you do. And I will turn it over to Mr. Warnicki, who can describe the intentions of ODOT for this parcel.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Not used to this. Thank you. Yeah, so ODOT has a mitigation strategy to offset our natural resource impacts that includes the West Hayden Island parcel. We also have a site in Scappoose Bay that ODOT is developing for mitigation to offset natural resource impacts, floodplain restoration, off-channel habitat connection. And then there's a site in Washington as well, Wapato Mitigation Bank. Similar mitigation approach on all 3 sites, really. For this current phase of the program, the construction of the Columbia River Bridge, we are hopefully acquiring the DSL property and then putting a conservation covenant on it to preserve that habitat. Future projects for the Interstate Bridge Program in North Portland Harbor and North Portland will also have impacts to natural resources, and those impacts we're planning on doing physical restoration and enhancement on that West Hayden Island site to offset those future impacts.
Appreciate that. And though we all know you, in case someone is listening later on, would you mind clarifying your name for the record?
Sorry.
No problem.
I'm Bill Warnicki. I'm the Deputy Environmental Manager for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Warnicki. That answers my questions. Just looking back at the screen to see if that prompted any other questions or comments from the governor or the treasurer. I don't see that. So with that, I would certainly be interested in a motion.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I move the land board authorize completion of the sale of the South Shore property on Hayden Island in Multnomah County to the Oregon Department of Transportation for $1.3 million, contingent upon completion of a legal lot of record for the property.
Thank you. Treasurer Steiner moves approval of the recommendation and the sale of filled lands on Hayden Island. Is there a second?
I second.
Governor Kotek seconds. Is there any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, are there any objections to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is approved. Sale can proceed. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Madam Director, we're moving to item 7, I think.
Yes, we are cruising along. I would like to invite, let me see, I have Chris, you're coming back. And I believe if she is here, yes, Director of Department of Land Conservation and Development, Brenda Bateman, is also here to join us. You would come up to the table. She's here to answer questions.
Good.
So this is an item to initiate rulemaking to adopt the department's state agency coordination program, or the SAC. And I will turn it over to Chris to introduce this item.
Hello again, Mr. Secretary, Governor Kotek, and Treasurer Steiner. For the record, my name is Chris Castelli. I'm the Deputy Director of the Land Management Division here at the department. And I'm going to walk you through Agenda Item 7, whether the State Land Board should initiate permanent rulemaking for administrative rules, OAR 141, 095, 005 through 0015, which adopts the State Agency Coordination Program for DSL. Rulemaking is needed to update the department's existing SAC program, which is in Appendix A, and I have a copy of it if anybody would like one in person. The State Agency Coordination Program. Rulemaking is needed, as you can see, to reflect current day organizational structure, programs, and interagency coordination activities. Once again, the constitutional, statutory, and administrative rule citations for authorities are listed in your memo. Overseen by the Department of Land Conservation and Development, and Dr. Bateman, SAC, state agency coordination programs are critical to Oregon's unique land use planning system. Oregon state agencies must prepare state agency coordination programs to ensure that their rules and programs related to land use comply with the statewide planning goals, which there are 19 of. 19. I think goal 1 is citizen involvement. Yep, nice. I used to be on a planning commission at one point in my life here, and make sure it's compatible with local comprehensive plans. In meeting these requirements, these programs also serve as important tools for coordination with other state agencies and local governments. In September of 2025, under Dr. Bateman's leadership, DLCD initiated an effort to encourage state agencies to review and modernize their state agency coordination programs and begin holding weekly office hours to provide general technical assistance and support. In addition, DLCD has developed language for common areas of coordination, such as climate resiliency and housing production. DSL is one of several agencies who have committed to this new effort with the goal of updating their programs by the end of 2026 or early 2027. The program framework is DSL's mechanism for meeting these requirements by outlining how it will coordinate with DLCD, other state and federal agencies, local governments, and tribes to ensure consistent and collaborative land use decision-making. Dates to these rules are needed because DSL's current program was last updated in 2006. But I do want to make a note there. I believe this is the most current one. So kudos to DSL. We're the first ones jumping on it. Let's see. So 2006, since then, DSL has undergone multiple reorganizations, as you know, and assumed new responsibilities, including LA State Research Forest and abandoned and derelict vessel programs. I would just say we've also had some programs move, like unclaimed property has moved to the treasurer's office. As a result, this state agency coordination program no longer accurately reflects DSL's current organizational structure, program areas, and coordination responsibilities. Updating this program provides an opportunity to review and document land use coordination across program areas and to revise those practices as needed. The update also supports compliance with OAR 141, 095, 0015 sub 3, which requires the DSL director to ensure that DSL land use programs are carried out in accordance with the program. If approved to initiate rulemaking, DSL will draft rules seeking to update the rule language to align with the updated state agency coordination program. The rule language will not require substantial amending, but does need to be updated to reflect any terminology changes or additions to the program. The date approved by the land board and other minor updates. So the rulemaking, it's going to be like when we adopted the forest management plan. We're going to adopt the updated state agency coordination plan into rule. So the plan will be the bigger piece, which was the second bullet. By adopting it by reference, the program itself becomes a rule. Upon land board approval to initiate rulemaking, DSL will draft the program framework with input from DLCD and other land use planning agencies. Additional input will be gathered through public comment period and at least 2 public hearings. Known impacted and interested parties include local governmental entities, Other land use planning state agencies, federal agencies such as the Army Corps of Engineers and the 9 federally recognized tribes of Oregon. Additional groups may be identified as the rules are drafted and the impacts of changes become known. DSL will consider feedback from the public comments, local and state agencies, tribal governments, and affected parties to refine the program and draft rule language. The final draft rules and the state agency coordination program will then be presented to the land board for adoption at a future meeting. The final steps involve submitting the land board adopted program to DLCD for review, public comment, and adoption by the Land Conservation Development Commission. So that's the steps that it goes through. It goes through not just our board and commission, but other state agencies who need to update their program. It goes to their boards and commissions for adoption, and then is submitted as a package to DLCD and is finally approved by the Land Conservation and Development Commission. Before I get to the recommendation, I just want to note the work of sort of herding the cats that DLCD has done. It's been a really good group, and it's been really good to hear where all the other agencies are and to get everyone together under Dr. Bateman, Palmer Mason, and our liaison, whose name is Reed Johnson. Hi, Reed, if you're out there. He's been great. And I also want to just say kudos to Alexa Piscano from our office, who's taken on the lead to tackle this, and to our rules coordinator, Daniela Bourdreau, as well. So with that, the department recommends that the land board authorize the department to initiate permanent rulemaking under OAR 141-095 to adopt a new state agency coordination program and amend its associated rules.
Stelly, Dr. Bateman, Madam Director, anything either of you want to add? No. Okay. Madam Treasurer, Governor, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
I couldn't hear you, Governor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a question.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I understand. I get the alignment and the multiple steps to get here. So we have both directors here. Can someone maybe explain in lay people's terms why this will be helpful for state service or customer service? I'm just a little, it's a lot of rulemaking and a lot of process. So tell me how this is, what's a concrete example of why this makes the world better?
Thank you for that question, Governor. I will I'll turn it over to Director Bateman to answer that question, who can provide the bigger picture.
Thank you, Chair Reed, Governor, Treasurer. For the record, my name is Brenda Bateman, Director of the Department of Land Conservation and Development. So the State Agency Coordination Program is a primary pillar of the state's land use planning program. And one thing that I love about this component is that the agreements are not between state agencies. The agreements are a public commitment by each state agency to its local partners and states its commitment to support and comply with local comprehensive plans as each state agency goes about doing its business, developing its projects, doing its work on the landscape in each local jurisdiction. And so it's a commitment of how the state agency plans to notice its local partners, how it plans to involve them, how it plans to take their input and make that a productive portion of the projects and work that they're doing at the local level. Most of these agency agreements, as was previously noted, are about 30 years old. And so the language that's in there definitely needs a refresh in terms of the technology we use to talk with our local partners, who we're planning to reach, and the projects themselves that we're working on. And so for the first time, we're building in issues that have not previously been mentioned in these agreements, like climate adaptation, tribal consultation, emerging technology, housing production, sage grouse, and so on. So much has happened in the last 30 years, and there's so much to talk about and so many successes to note that we want to make sure that those are captured in this document and that we have a public commitment going forward.
Thank you, Director
Bateman.
Mr. Chair.
Madam Treasurer, please.
Thank you. Director Bateman, thank you for that very clear response. We have agreements with our tribal partners in other contexts in state government. And what I don't know, and maybe should, is whether there's one overarching intergovernmental agreement about tribal consultation, or whether that depends on each agency to form its own. And if it's the latter, then great. This set of rulemaking will, as you pointed out, start to address that. If it's the former, I just want to be sure that there's a plan in place so that the rules don't end up and the structure doesn't end up to be contradictory or inconsistent.
Do it. Chairman Reed, Treasurer Steiner, for the record, I'm Chris Castelli, and we've actually talked a lot about this in the office hours and the working groups that DLCD has been convening. I believe the strategy we're looking at for addressing that, I don't know if you had a chance to look at our old state agency coordination program, but it has a section on how we coordinate with tribal governments, section 5. This plan is 30 years old. As Director Bateman mentioned, a lot of other programs, plans or programs are older. What has happened since these were adopted is all agencies that I'm aware of have adopted government-to-government policies. So we've talked about how to sort of tie those things together with DLCD and the other natural resource agencies. So we are coming up with some stock language is what we've been working on that references the agency policies. And by number, those policies numbers will not change. This actually, I'm going to give Danielle Boudreau some credit here. This is one of her ideas in our office hour or check-in meetings, so that we will have a reference to our government policy, and as we update that, as we refine things, as we learn, we'll be able to just wrap that into our state agency coordination plan moving forward without having to reopen the plan or reopen rulemaking. And that was sort of the game plan we've been talking about in our conversations with both DLCD and other agencies, and we have had our tribal liaison involved in that as well. One of a few different spots where DLCD has been helping us as the agencies who have to develop the state agency coordination programs with ideas for stock language that sort of streamline the program process.
Thank you, Mr. Castelli.
Thank you. That's helpful.
One other question for me, I might be the only one who got a little confused, but in your description of around the plan and rules and the recommendation here around the authorization of initiating rulemaking, can you kind of restate and clarify the sequence of what happens next? This reference to the language here about how that will all proceed after would be helpful, please.
Sure, Secretary Reed. We are working with all of our programs right now. We have the sort of external agency group where we're working on ideas. We also are looking internally at how we do things now and coming up with all of our coordination steps with local governments. Port districts is another special area that's in our current program. And starting to update what the program, almost think about like the forest management plan, looks like. This has to be adopted by our board and commission under, I don't know if it's under Director Bateman, the statute, or the OARs for 660, but once we get this.
Which board is that you're referring to?
It has to be adopted by you first.
Land board.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is probably what you're asking about the
Yes.
sequence. Okay.
Yes.
So we are drafting the updated program.
Okay.
It needs to be adopted by everybody needs to be adopted by their boards and commissions. So in this case, the land board.
And that is not this vote. This is rulemaking.
This is initiating the rulemaking. Yes.
And then there'll be a subsequent vote on the plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So that's the step.
Okay.
Then it goes to DLCD. And then they will have a public comment period as well. And then they will take that to their commission to adopt our agency's program. All things working out well. And then hopefully we're done for a while. Hopefully not 30 years, but we'll be done done for a while. So we are drafting an updated program now with the help of with folks internally, and then with the help of DLCD and our other partners. This will kick off the actual rulemaking process, which is the step that needs to be taken to adopt the program. It'll get adopted, and it'll go to Dr. Bateman and her team to take it to LCDC.
So in the subsequent vote, at least for me, I probably would be helped by a little bit clearer explanation of that, where we are in the sequence, or maybe a flow chart or something.
Yeah.
Great, I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam
Mr.
Treasurer.
Chair, thank you. So, Mr. Castelli, in terms of process, what this now sounds like, says the woman who was in the legislature until a year and a half ago, is that one chamber passes a bill after it gets heard and commented on by the public and whatever and amended. And then it goes off to the other chamber and it could get amended there. And then it has to go back, presumably, because if it gets changed while it's over at DLCD for their public comment period, then we have to reconsider it. But maybe I'm misunderstanding, as opposed to something like the budget in the legislature where it all gets considered by both chambers simultaneously and all the public comment happens at one time, and then both groups vote on the final product simultaneously. It's a simplistic analogy, but it's the one that I'm most familiar with. So bear with me.
Chair Reed, Treasurer Steiner, that is I think that's generally correct. We want to avoid a conference committee. So that is why we are working so closely with DLCD on this amendment. And maybe Dr. Bateman wants to talk to
Right,
the
but
process
I'm
once it leaves DSL. Sorry, go on,
Yeah, I'm
Treasurer.
sorry, just to clarify, what I thought I heard you say was we at DSL would go through this process and would go through a public comment period. And then once that had been done and the rules had been amended based on public comment, or the plan had been amended based on public comment, then we as the land board would vote on it. And only after that would it go over to DLCD for their public comment period and for LCDC to vote on it. And that's why I'm concerned that it could get changed again. But maybe I'm mishearing something you're saying. Because if there's no public comment on the DLCD side before we vote on it, then there's a real risk that something gets changed again and it comes back to us.
I mean, I have an answer. Go for it.
Mr. Chair, Treasurer, thank you for the question. I think you are tracking correctly. This is actually all laid out in statute. And so I will say, it having been 30 years since we've gone through this process, we are this is more of a, not a pilot. We are experimenting and learning together. We are remembering together at the moment how all of this works. And so we actually have pulled in quite a few folks who have been around for a while to help us try to remember how this works. And I think you're correct in your tracking in terms of how it's worded. We'll just put out there that we're always open to joint commission meetings. So that's something to consider. But yes, I think you're tracking correctly that the way it's laid out in statute are these steps. And so we are trying to work very closely together to alleviate any changes along the way, mitigate
That's
for those.
great, because it could turn into a perpetual motion machine, you know, if we approve it and then they change it and then it comes back to us and it has to be commented on again and then we approve it and then it goes back, you know, like, I don't want this to be a forever, you know, a Sisyphean task here. So, and I don't think you all do either. So thank you in advance for everything you can do to reduce the likelihood of that.
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam Treasurer.
Chair.
Thank you, Governor. Yes, please, Madam Governor.
Just for clarifying, appreciate this conversation. So according to the notes, last September, DLCD initiated an effort to encourage state agencies to review and modernize their SAC programs. My assumption is we do not need additional staff in any of the agencies to do this work.
Thank you, Governor, for the question. Director Bateman agreed that, in fact, there are no staff needed for this work.
No additional.
No additional staff. We are using existing resources to conduct this work.
Okay, thank you.
That may be more discussion than any of us anticipated, but I think better for it. And we'll try to remember this when it comes back. At least I will try not to be confused again. Thank you for the discussion. I think we might be ready for a motion.
That means I have to come off mute. Mr. Chair, I move the land board authorize the department to initiate permanent rulemaking under OAR 141-095 to adopt a new state agency coordination program and amend its associated rules.
Thank you. Treasurer Steiner moves approval of the recommendation and authorization of the initiation of rulemaking. Is there a second?
I second.
Governor Kotek seconds. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none. Any objections to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is approved. Rulemaking can start. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that robust conversation. Being the first one out of the gate means that we get to till the ground for DLCD on this one. Thank you. I'm going to give Chris a break and invite up Bill Warnicki again. Bill Ryan, our Deputy Director of Aquatic Resource Management, as we consider adopting rules for public use restrictions on the Sandy River Delta in Multnomah County.
Mr. Ryan.
Good morning, Chair Reed and members of the board. For the record, my name is Bill Ryan. I'm Deputy Director of the Aquatic Resource Management Program here at the Department of State Lands. And the issue that I'm addressing here is whether the State Land Board should initiate rulemaking within OAR 141-088 to consider prohibiting overnight camping year-round and open fires at any time between May and November on state-owned lands at the Sandy River Delta. This includes approximately 50 acres of natural area east of the Sandy River River bank from mile 0 to 2.5, and the Columbia River side channel riverbank as illustrated in Appendix A. The authorities are listed in the agenda item packet. For background, the Oregon Department of State Lands oversees the beds and banks of the Sandy River, as well as approximately 50 acres of natural area adjacent to the Sandy River Delta, which is a 1,500-acre U.S. Forest Service natural area extensively used for recreation. For more than a decade, this area has been used for long-term camping by people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. The department works with local, state, and federal partners to reduce impacts of long-term camping with an emphasis on connecting people with services and housing. The Delta is vulnerable to long-term unauthorized overnight camping, which has contributed to extensive damage to its environmental, cultural, and recreational resources. While the department recognizes the complex challenges of unsheltered homelessness, this land is not suitable for habitation due to wildfire risk, flooding, and environmental degradation. Currently, there is an emergency closure in place through this June, enacted under OAR 141-088-0007 to facilitate efforts to conserve and protect the Delta. The department is considering extending this emergency closure due to the drought and wildfire risk over the summer. However, these are short-term closures, and open fires and overnight camping are not currently addressed in the existing rule for public use restrictions in the 50 acres of state-owned land at the Delta. You can see that area mapped in Appendix A. It's up on the screen. Without rulemaking, local law enforcement and the department cannot enforce these restrictions long-term. The current rules were first adopted in April 2024 with public use restrictions prohibiting the use of motor vehicles and the discharge of firearms. If approved to begin rulemaking, the department will draft an amendment to the existing rule to also prohibit overnight camping year-round and open fires between May and November. Updates to the rules are needed because the current rule does not meet the needs of the department or local law enforcement. These amendments will ensure local law enforcement can enforce the new restrictions without enacting further emergency closures and allow for the prohibition of use for those who violate the restricted uses in rule. The existing restrictions on open fires and camping for the Sandy River, which are in 141-088-0035, do not extend to the surrounding lands in the Delta. The intent of the 2024 rulemaking to restrict motor vehicles and discharge of firearms in the Delta was to complement the existing restrictions that were in OAR 141-088-0035. However, it was determined those existing restrictions do not extend beyond the beds and banks of the river and therefore cannot be applied to the upland parts of the Delta. So the proposed amendments will bring these rules into alignment with others in Division 88. The proposed amendments are expected to strengthen protections for the health and welfare of the Sandy River Delta. Environmental conditions are likely to improve along with a reduced risk of wildfire. These changes should enhance both actual safety and public confidence in safety, while also creating opportunities for increased recreational use of the Delta. Upon a land board approval to initiate rulemaking, the department will open a public comment period and host at least 2 public hearings. The comment period is anticipated to begin in August of this year. The department will not convene a rulemaking advisory committee for this rulemaking, as the proposed changes bring the rule into alignment with other rules in Division 88 and achieve the original intent of OAR 141-088-0035. Known impacted and interested parties include local government and law enforcement agencies, individuals wanting to use the Delta for overnight camping, and individuals who recreate at the Delta. The department will consider feedback from public comments, local and state agencies, tribal governments, and affected parties to refine the draft rule language. The final draft will then be presented to the land board for adoption at a future meeting. And so the recommendation from the department is that the land board authorize the department to initiate permanent rulemaking under OAR 141-088-0036 to prohibit overnight camping year-round and open fires at any time between May and November on state-owned lands at the Sandy River Delta in Multnomah County.
Thank you, sir. Governor, Madam Treasurer, any questions?
No question.
Thank you. I'm curious if you could clarify a little bit about the calendar, noting that the comment period would be intended to begin in August. Is that because the current setup essentially has the effect of preventing the unwanted activities and gives us the room to wait until August?
Chair Reed, actually the timing is just for our process to get the rules in place and posted for public review and comment. We have an emergency closure that expires in June, and we probably will extend that in order to cover the restrictions for camping and fire use of fires until the permanent rulemaking is undertaken.
That's roughly what I was trying to get at, that this does not leave us vulnerable. So I appreciate that. Okay. If there aren't any other questions, I think we're ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the land board authorize the department to initiate permanent rulemaking under OAR 141-088-0036 to prohibit overnight camping year-round and open fires at any time between May and November on state-owned lands at the Sandy River Delta in Multnomah County.
Thank you. Treasurer Steiner moves approval of the recommendation to initiate permanent rulemaking. Is there a second?
I second.
Governor Kotek seconds. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, any objections to the motion? Seeing none, the motion carries. Rulemaking can begin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
To item number 9.
Thank you, Secretary Reed. The next action item is the Oregon Department of Forestry's biannual budget management of the common school forest lands and the fire protection on other DSL managed lands. I'd like to invite Mike Wilson, ODF State Forest Division Chief, who will join me, and call back up Chris Castelli to present this budget item. We'll then wrap up with an update on our related strategic plan project.
Yep.
Chief Wilson, actually, I'm handing it over to you.
Yeah, I'll just introduce it real quick. Thank you. Well, good morning again, Secretary Reed, Treasurer Steiner, Governor Kotek. For the record, I'm Chris Castelli, the Deputy Director of the Land Management Division. One note on Bill's thing. The good news is, Treasurer Steiner, Bill's rulemaking does not need to go to another commission when he's done with it. So you'll just have the one regular step for that one. Today, we are going to talk about whether the land board should approve the Oregon Department of Forestry's proposed common school forest lands budget for submission to the Department of Administrative Services. The authorities are in your memo, both the Constitution and revised statute for both DSL and ODF. This is required under Section 10.1 of our 2023 Agreement on Common School Forest Lands, which is a management agreement that the department shall provide a preliminary biannual department-wide budget to DSL by August 1st of each even-numbered year. And I think with that, I can turn it over to Mike Wilson, ODF's State Forest Division's Chief. So thank you for joining us today, Mike.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, Secretary Reed, Governor Kotek, Treasurer Steiner. For the record, my name is Mike Wilson. I am the State Forest Division Chief for the Oregon Department of Forestry. It's good to be here today to present the 27-29 agency's budget. And joining me at the table today also is Kevin Boyd. He is serving as a State Forest Division Asset Unit Manager. So the Oregon Department of Forestry will be managing 26,093 acres of common school forest lands throughout the state, covering geographies through the Coast Range, Willamette Valley, and Southwest Oregon. ODF's mission on common school forest lands is to manage and protect these lands for the maximum short and long-term benefit to the people of Oregon. The Oregon Department of Forestry's current service level budget for all management costs and statewide fire patrol assessments on common school forest lands and other DSL managed lands is approximately $5.52 million. So if we can go to the next slide, or do I have the clicker here? I think Ted. Sure. You're our first slide person. Okay, thank you. This slide here, this details out the actual management costs of common school forest lands specifically. And so as you can see here, we have about 3.41 million direct and indirect management costs, direct management costs. And our indirect management costs, administrative costs, are about 0.23 million. And our fire patrol assessment costs are about 0.26 million on these common school forest lands specifically. So what that does is it leaves us estimated revenue after management costs on the common school forest lands of 0.57 million. The estimated timber sale value that we'll get out of that is 4.46 million. The other Department of State.
Sorry, Mr.
Madam Treasurer.
Thank you. I talked to Director Lovell about this a little bit, and I can hold this till later, but since we're on these slides, you know, the timber revenue, this estimated timber revenue is roughly 25% of what we've historically received over the course of a biennium, netted over the course of a biennium.
Madam Treasurer, just to orient myself as you're asking the question, you're talking about the 4.46 million on this slide?
No, I'm actually talking about language that was maybe on the previous slide.
Okay.
I apologize. Maybe I've got it wrong, but and maybe it was just in the written materials, in which case I apologize if I did that. But the long and the short of it is, and Mr. Wilson, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that historically we have netted a little over $2 million for timber sales over the course of a biennium. And what you're now predicting is about $500,000 over the course of a biennium. And I'm guessing that has to do, I'm pretty sure that has to do with the timing of when trees were planted and when previous harvests happened and what's available to harvest. But could you just clarify that for the record, please? And if I said something wrong, if I was inaccurate, please correct me.
No, yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Treasurer Steiner. I think I'll say yes. First of all, a lot of this has to do with the timing of what timber is available for harvest, and so the age class distribution and so forth. After I've got a couple of more things here, and then I'd actually like Kevin to dive into that a little bit more. He's prepared with some of that.
That's fine. I'm happy to defer. I just wanted to make, since the slide was up, I wanted to make sure I got my question in now. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, other Department of State lands, fire patrol assessment are about 1.63 million. That's not shown on this slide, but it's part of what was on the previous slide. That totals about $1.89 million for the total fire patrol assessment. So we can go back to the second slide. Thank you. And the estimated timber, as I said, the estimated timber harvest is about $4.46 million. And that is a result of about 8.9 million board feet estimated. And so that again results in the positive revenue, which is not great, but it is still positive of $570,000 approximately over the biennium. So next slide, please. And so here, this is actually from our report that we presented last February as well. Basically just showing that we average about 1.32 over the last 5 years, $1.32 million annually. And these numbers, however, do not include the fire patrol assessment. So they would be a little bit less if you took that out for the fire patrol assessment on common school forest lands that we manage. So, and those costs aren't great. They are down a little bit this year, so that's a good thing. West Side Fire Patrol assessment went down. East Side Fire Patrol assessment actually in some areas went up a little bit. But on the whole, for the common school forest lands that we manage, fire patrol assessment did go down. So
I understand that that's a lagging indicator, so that reflects what has happened, not necessarily what will happen.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you. So I will turn it over to Kevin now, and he can go into a little bit more detail about the financial outcomes.
Good morning, Secretary Reed, Governor Kotek, Treasurer Steiner. For the record, I'm Kevin Boyd, and I serve as a State Forest Asset Unit Manager for the Oregon Department of Forestry. I'd first like to address the positive 0.57 million net operating income related to state forest management cost. First, harvest volume for the biennium is estimated at 8.9 million board feet, generating approximately 4.5 million in revenue, which averages 4.5 million board feet and 2.3 million in revenue per fiscal year. Over the past 5 years, harvest volumes have averaged 6.2 million board feet annually, producing approximately 2.9 million in annual revenue. There are two primary reasons for the variation in harvest volume. First, the division is currently implementing both a forest management plan and a habitat conservation plan. Once an incidental take permit is issued, additional areas will become available for harvest. Second, the age class distribution on common school forest lands does not support a consistent annual harvest volume. Harvest levels will continue to fluctuate year to year as forest stands reach maturity. Under the Habitat Conservation Plan, future harvest volumes are expected to average between 5.5 and 6 million board feet annually. Next, I'd like to address the 1.89 million patrol assessment costs. Fire protection costs for the 26,093 acres of common school forest lands under ODF management is around $263,720 for the biennium, representing 14% of DSL's total fire protection costs. Fire patrol assessments are expected to increase an additional 17.2% next biennium. In fiscal year 27, we did see a decrease in fire patrol assessment due to the implementation of House Bill 3940, with a reduction in administrative expenditures. However, fire protection costs are expected to outpace inflation through the 27-29 biennium. This concludes our presentation. Thank you for your time and consideration, and happy to answer any questions.
I have probably an unfair question, but introduce the issue of the revenue. How much volatility do you expect in the market? Are we likely to see the gross revenue changing in the future in any direction, particularly? As I say, it's an unfair question.
Yeah. So currently, so we sell timber sales for 3-year term. So a lot of our sold sales are above market average currently, which is a good thing. However, we've seen a decrease in harvest volume over the last year, where purchasers are holding off, cutting that higher stumpage rate. So there is volatility, and it will continue. But hopefully, things in the future will pick up. Those timber sales do have an expiration date. We do have midpoint payments to keep them on schedule. So we hope to see them increase soon.
Thank you. Governor Kotek, Madam Treasurer, any questions?
When do you anticipate the permits becoming available? Sorry, I should have asked permission, Mr. Chair.
Treasurer, I asked you, please.
Thank you. When do you anticipate those permits becoming available for the additional sales through the Habitat Conservation Plan.
Mr. Chair, Secretary Steiner, thank you for the question. It's a little hard soon. Does that sound good? So
Yes,
we've been
that's
working on
great.
we've been working on getting the HCP finalized to the point where the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and NOAA Fisheries can complete their BIOPS and issue permits. We're on a schedule. We think perhaps this fall, maybe the latest could be next January. But we are really, we're very, very close to the pencils down version that's kind of like, here, analyze this. And then we get our answer back on whether we get take coverage or not for the covered species. And once that happens, whether we, we're also in the process of trying to adopt a new forest management plan that will go along with that habitat conservation plan. But regardless of the forest management plan outcome, it wouldn't be the best fit, but we are positioned to be able to take immediate advantage of those permits when they become available. And so then we can start feeding in sales into our annual operations plans process simply based on when we want to schedule them versus having to draw them out for 2 years beforehand and plan for T&E, threatened and endangered species surveys and so forth. So things are looking good for that.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Kotek, questions? See, okay. I guess one observation, just as we conclude this conversation, is how challenging some of these different circumstances are, different lands and different attributes. And Madam Director, I would just encourage you to keep thinking long-term and exploring the outside outside the box thinking about how we do this through partnerships, whether it's ODFW, tribes, or others. There's lots of options there. So.
Thank you for that comment, Mr. Secretary. It's actually segues very nicely into the comment I'd like to make about our strategic project on this to improve the financial performance of our school forest lands. It's listed under our supporting school strategic goal, which aims to increase net revenue to the Common School Fund in a variety of different ways. And it's been identified as an ongoing project that's going to span strategic plan timeframes. It also advances the forest land management actions in our 2024 asset management plan. And so with that, we've been working with ODF, and we really appreciate their partnership on this initiative to explore planning strategies that include exchange, consolidation, decertification, and recertification of different common school forest lands. And that analysis is currently underway. Anything that we do would not happen all at once. It would be over a period of time, but it would align quite nicely with the adoption of the permit and changes in forest management practices with ODF. So we're working hand in glove with them on this analysis.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Treasurer, we might be ready for a motion.
Okay, then. I move the Land Board approve the submission of the Oregon Department of Forestry's 2027-29 budget for the Common School Fund forest land and other DSL managed lands to the Department of Administrative Services as part of ODF's agency request budget, with recognition that there may be policy option packages that could cause changes to the budget, although none are known at this time.
Thank you, Treasurer Steiner. Very comprehensive description of the motion. You heard the Treasurer move approval of the submission of the ODF budget for Common School Forest Land. Madam Governor, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Governor Kotek seconds. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing
I
none,
will just say, I was just going to say,
please.
I'm amused being on this side of it now, after years of being on the legislative side after we got the governor's recommended budget. It's funny to be on this side of approving submission of ARBs. So
We'll note your amusement, Madam Treasurer. Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
Process. No.
Any further discussion? Any objections to the motion? Seeing none, the motion carries and the budget can be submitted. Thank you,
gentlemen. Thank you.
Another budget item, Madam Director, I think.
We have a budget-packed agenda today. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'd like to first walk through this item, how I'll present it, and that includes information for land board discussion, and then followed by an action item for land board discussion and vote. Joining me today is Deputy Director of Administration, Katie Hudson. This information item is the department's potential 2027-2029 policy option packages. These POPs are being presented to you for discussion and input rather than a vote. This is because the department stands apart among state agencies and that the governor is both a voting member of our governing body and the state's ultimate decision maker on what moves forward from agency requested budgets into the governor's budget. This presents a unique challenge for the department as we seek to comply with the state budget instructions while also ensuring parity for 3 voting members and transparency and accountability in developing our agency requested budget. We have a recommendation on how to address this challenge, which will be presented in that action item. I'll first present this budget information for discussion and then present the action item for discussion and vote. I do want to note, well, that we do not have anyone signed up to provide testimony today. We did receive written testimony supporting the proposed budget. We also hosted a public information session on June 3rd and appreciate the questions and conversation during that session. That was recorded and will be available on our website with these materials. For this particular land board meeting. With that, do you have any questions on the presentation order?
No.
Great. I'll begin with an overview of key considerations in developing these POPs. First and foremost, we considered how we maintain our core services and meet existing obligations. Included in that analysis was the progress that we've made on this current biennium. So before you on this side is our current 2025-2027 budget initiatives. These initiatives focused on restoring core services, advancing statewide priorities, continuing projects that span multiple budget cycles. As we near the halfway point of this biennium, we've hired a number of the positions that we requested, almost 100% for some of these key areas. And we're about halfway through. In fact, a number of them are currently posted right now. Especially, I think we have 3 GIS positions that posted yesterday. We have also adopted metrics that are tracking the progress towards these outcomes. And as these programs and projects get underway, we want to maintain that momentum. Ensuring the long-term success of these initiatives and ongoing work advances our mission and strategic goals. And that was the basis for examining our 2027 and 2029 request. It allows us to keep working in multiple ways to serve Oregon well. Ted, could you advance to the next slide, please? Thank you. I'll now provide an overview of the proposed POPs, which include ongoing and one-time requests. We're requesting ongoing resources for the POPs to maintain these core services. That's this slide in front of you. First, there are 4 position packages. These are low-cost packages to reclassify 6 positions and add 1 additional limited duration internal auditor position to meet the requirements for our agency size and fund mix. It does include 2 positions, the project manager and the South SLU educator, to make them permanent. Next, our package for our new information and permitting system, the modern permitting and information system package, is to support our current ongoing initiative to update our IT program. This system is anticipated, knock on wood, to go live this fall. And the package would support the ongoing maintenance and operation of that IT program. So it'd become part of our continuing service level. We also included in this revenue package, which, as you have encouraged us to do, is to seek fees to pay for our ongoing services to support permitting and waterway and territorial sea rules for leases that will be ratified in the 2027 legislative session. So this item actually represents revenue in, not expenditure out. Finally, we have a package for the abandoned and derelict vessel program. This package funds program operations and vessel removals using the ADV fund, which was established with the one-time $18.8 million investment from the Monsanto settlement agreement. Because we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, I'd like to invite Larry Warren, the director of Oregon State Marine Board, up to the table to discuss a little bit of how we work with the Marine Board and how we are pursuing diversification of our revenue streams for the ADV program. Thank you, Larry.
Director.
Thank you.
Chair Reed, Governor Kotek, Treasurer Steiner. I'm Larry Warren, the Director of your Oregon State Marine Board, and here to talk a little bit about the ADV funding and program. So Treasurer Reed, you had this a lot of this the other day, so maybe you can just recap some of this for me.
I'm sure I could not do it as well as I do here.
So the Marine Board is a small agency. We have a 5-member governor-appointed, Senate-confirmed board, 44 employees. We have approximately a $45 million budget, and of that, 72% of that goes directly to fund boating facilities and marine patrol across the state. We do that through a lot of grant work. So we grant to local governments, parks, ports, tribal governments, nonprofits, and we contract with sheriffs and OSP across state for the Marine Patrol. We're 80% funded by other funds and 20% by federal funds. We get no lottery dollars. We get no general funds. Specific to the ADV work, for a long time, the program resided wholly inside the Marine Board, and at that time, and we still do have a permanent $150,000 in our biennial budget for ADV work. And as most of you know, that's quite small relative to the size of the problem. And DSL was always a partner at the table during our tenure of working on that issue. Biennium ago, DSL got some additional funding and took some of the staff, which was great, to address this program more wholly. Marine Board still has its $150,000 though for that permanent work. We also incur as an agency about $300,000 a year of law enforcement work that's directly related to ADV work. So we refund sheriffs through our contracts with them, and we can see through the way they code some of that billing that works related to the derelict vessel program. Appreciate director level and their work with their agency on how we could work together to find some permanent stable funding for some of the ADV work at DSL. And the solution that we've arrived at that we were proposing is a increase to the boat title fee specifically for ADV work. To give you an idea, the agency processes around 34,000 titles a year. So if we increase that $15 on the title, it would generate about $500,000. And if we increased it $20, that would generate around $680,000. OSMB would still have the $150,000 of permanent biennial funding that it could either manage or transfer to DSL if the agency saw one way or the other work better. And we would also continue to be able to pay for the $300,000 a year of marine law enforcement work related to ADVs. To give you an idea, though, there are a few concerns that I have, and just want to note those just for the board. OSMB, we're currently in our ARB already seeking a fee increase just to maintain our current service level. So to give you an idea, the boat title fee right now is $75, and as part of our ARB fee increase, we would be requesting to go from $75 to $150 for our title fee. That doesn't include that $15 or $20 that I mentioned for just reference for how much money we could generate for the ADV if we had an ADV specific fee. So already quite a significant increase. In the past, and I would expect this to come up again when we've looked at different ways to fund this, rural boaters often don't see that their boater dollars should go to fund what they consider to be primarily an urban issue. And I think if we move forward with this, we will hear some of that again. I think my bigger concern out of all of this would be because we're in a spot where we need just a current service level fee increase, that if we do a fee increase specific for a title to fund ADV work, that could become in competition with our CSL needs. And any reductions to our CSL, again, we're not quite a pass-through agency, but a lot of our money does go out to grants and funding to Marine Patrol. So any reduction in our CSL pretty much directly correlates to reductions in those areas and gets felt around the state. But the opportunity here is to provide some stable funding. When Director Level and I have talked about this in the past, it would provide stable funding for position in DSL. We would have that continue to work and really shore up what's been an important problem to the state for a long time, but there's never really been a good set permanent funding structure on how to deal with some of that. So that I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
Looking at the screen to say, Madam Treasurer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this issue around, could you tell me when was the last time the title fee was increased?
Treasurer Steiner, our last fee increase was in 2020, and our proposed budget, the fees would go in place in 2028. So we would have gone 8 years in between fee increases.
Okay. And that's during a period of fairly significant inflation. And I should remember this because I know this came up a bunch when I was in the legislature, but remind me what kinds of boats are subject to this annual registration?
Treasurer Steiner, it is all recreational vessels. So specific to this fee, it would be our motorized vessels and sailboats over 12 feet. So there's approximately 150,000 vessels. The 34,000 titles, just the churn of people buying and selling boats.
And just to make
Got it.
sure I understood this, that is not annual, that's title as opposed to registration. Did I hear that correctly?
Secretary Reed, that's correct. And the reason that we are looking at the title fee as opposed to the registration is the Coast Guard actually prohibits us from encumbering an ADV fee on registration. And if we did that, we would most certainly fail a Coast Guard audit and lose a significant portion of our federal funding. That's a bigger issue. There's actually a bill at the federal level that really hasn't gotten any movement. It's got states representing probably all different political viewpoints supporting that because the Coast Guard has enforced that more rigorously over the last few years.
Just out of curiosity, sorry to jump in front of you, Madam Treasurer, what's the history
Please.
of why the Coast Guard would
Yeah.
prevent that?
Secretary Reed, it's an interesting one. Back when they created these laws in 1959, I presume they just decided that they wanted to make sure that boater dollars were going to boater things. And so they put some pretty specific restrictions on what those registration dollars could be. Some states have gone out and created their own state-only stickers or local stickers, but there's so much cost with that it becomes difficult. You're running dual systems. And they enforce that through audits, and they do watch for that specifically. We actually, as a state, the way we handle our invasive species permit fee with motorized boats gets flagged, but candidly, we found a kind of a loophole through some of their accounting practices where we still pass their audits, but we get watched very closely as a state partially because of that. And so that's where the title fee makes sense. And we have a letter from the Coast Guard. We made sure as we were working through with the agency, specifically saying that they will not have any issue with us doing this on our title fees. And we've held on to that letter in a safe spot. So
Understood. Thank you.
That's very helpful. So I am always cognizant, and I spend a lot of time in my current job thinking about costs that people have to incur to live their daily lives. That being said, motorized vessels are not cheap, right? And if you're talking about fundamentally, assuming you did what you asked for your basic title fee, which is basically add another $75, and then the additional, let's just say 15, even 20, that still keeps it under an additional $100 to cover your additional costs for all the things that directly affect boaters across the entire state and addresses the ADV problem, or at least helps to address the ADV problem. And if, as a percentage of the cost of a motorized vessel, doesn't really seem that high to me. I mean, unless it's super junky, I'm guessing it's tough to get even a used motorized vessel for under several $1,000s. So I am sympathetic to the concern about the appearance of raising this, but the math suggests that this is not an unreasonable thing for you all to be requesting, nor for these two agencies together to add this additional fee on to address what, despite what our rural colleagues say, is a statewide problem. And believe me, I'm not unsympathetic to the cost of increased fees, but this is why I've always believed we should have an automatic inflation adjuster on every single fee in state government, so that when we do have to raise them because we don't quite keep up, it's not as dramatic. Because if we'd done that, you probably would only be raising it $40 instead of $75. I'm just guessing. So that's my perspective on these fee increases. I know you're going to get pushback, and I'm supportive of them.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Appreciate it. Other comments or questions? I don't cut this part off, but I know you've got a long way to go through your entire narrative as well. So, Director Warren, really appreciate your adding the perspective too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I just want to note today that We are not including this as a POP. It is not a DSL POP, but it would require a 2027-29 revenue POP in OSMB's agency requested budget. So this direction from the land board is helpful for him to take back to his commission. I also want to note that this is really one sliver of how we're diversifying and exploring different revenue streams as we continue to spend down the Monsanto funding. So this is not common school funding that's supporting the ADV program. You previously approved $100 per lease or registration for our under submerged and submersible leases that will go to the state. Sorry, I'm going to get the Submerged Lease Enhancement Fund. Submerged Lands Enhancement Fund, which is a grant program that we give to others to help clean up Oregon's waterways, so that we're encouraging community involvement in these activities as well. And then we are working to bring on a federal lobbyist. As you heard Director Warren state, that there are some activities happening in DC that we want to make sure that we have a seat and a voice at the table to help us expand opportunities. And thank you to the governor's office for arranging for a meeting with the Coast Guard and with the Corps of Engineers as well to talk about regional efforts and how we can fund this problem. So we are really attacking this from all angles, and this is just one piece where we've been very collaborative and grateful to OSMB's help and continued support for the ADV program. Ted, if you could pull up, thank you. The next slide. We have a number of one-time requests as part of our budget, which are focused on meeting our existing legal and environmental obligations, as well as commitments to use funding secured for specific projects, primarily federal funding. First, we have two packages for Portland Harbor. One package supports the future cleanup work, and the other supports protection of the state's interests. We are moving into a different phase of Portland Harbor, so that's why those numbers have changed. There are two packages for maintaining DSL-owned lands. We own this building that you're sitting in, and it needs a new roof. We will be exploring solar as part of that package. And then we also have a need for an ongoing capital and maintenance planning, not ongoing, but for developing a plan to deal with the ongoing capital and maintenance needs of all of our facilities. Finally, there are 5 packages in the continued funding projects in this next biennium. We are carrying forward federal funds from the removal fill improvements, which is an EPA grant, our South Slough capital improvements, the Shutter Creek redevelopment planning effort, which is for the Elliott State Research Forest headquarters, the ongoing investment in the geologic carbon sequestration project that we're doing in partnership with Dogami, and finally allowing for private foundation funding for the Oregon Ocean Science Trust, which is a legislatively created trust that sits within, that DSL manages their budget.
It's a limitation request, or?
It is for incoming outside funding. For the 2027-2029 biennium, the total estimated agency requested budget is $114 million, which includes $88.8 million in current service levels and $26.2 million in policy option packages, which is a significant decrease from last year. But as you saw, we have made significant progress in last year's requests, and we're waiting to see. We're taking sort of a do what we can with the resources that we have approach. So this really was a nuts and bolts budget year for our POPs. And with that, I will conclude. If there are any additional questions and comments and discussion.
Been asking as they occur to me. I'm looking to see. I can only see you, Treasurer Steiner. I want to see if you have any comments, or Governor. I can see you both. Not seeing any. Okay, we're ready to go.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Here. Okay. So next, I'd like to move on to the action item associated with this budget discussion. As I briefly mentioned earlier, the governor's dual role as chair of the State Land Board and head of the Oregon state government presents a unique but welcome challenge for DSL. The Land Board's laws, duties, and general policies do not require a vote on the state's on the department's agency requested budget prior to submission. But requiring a land board to vote on the ARB would actually create a structural conflict with ORS 273.031 by providing the governor with 2 votes, first as the chair of the land board and second as the governor, in deciding which elements of the ARB to include in the governor's budgets. The statewide budget instructions, however, include this requirement. Quote, requests of agencies headed by boards or commission must be approved by official action of these bodies and signed by the board or commission. Consequently, the department cannot comply with the budget instructions because the land board has not approved the ARB. To resolve this issue, the department is recommending that the land board authorize me as the director to formally certify the agency requested budget in compliance with the DAS budget instructions and sign the budget certification page, quote, each time the budget document is updated, which is included to reflect the governor's budget and legislatively adopted budget with both, which require signatures. Making this recommendation, 3 considerations were front of mind. First, ensuring a transparent budget development process through public discussion of our budget prior to submission, including here today and discussions with all of you, as well as the public discussion of our recommendation for resolving this issue. Second, ensuring your oversight. Your discussion of the information items provides direction to the department that we hold ourselves accountable to. Your input today, as well as the testimony received and public discussion during last week's public information session, support further refinement of policy packages. I also want to note that you have an ongoing role in shaping the department's work. From the foundation provided in our strategic plan to the expectations and of our programs and project outcomes, you set the direction for the work that we do, and individual budget items will be coming back to you for individual vote, as you saw today on many of the land transfer items, as well as fee and revenue packages. This request is an extremely tailored delegation of authority that allows the department to submit the budget materials in a way that comports with the state budget instructions, but does not actually require a vote on the budget. It does not affect the land board's constitutional or statutory role or delegate any land board approval authority for actual expenditures. Finally, ensuring each land board member has an equal vote per statute is of top of mind in this request. Avoiding any appearance or potential of unequal votes is essential. So with that, I'd like to conclude and answer any questions you may have on the budget or this action item.
Thank you, Madam Director. Governor, Madam Treasurer. I for one, think you explained it well, and it's an elegant solution to an interesting conflict. So I guess the only question for me was the in the recommendations for all current and subsequent. So to clarify whether that a future land board made up of different people would need to do it again, or our vote would hold going forward indefinitely.
I believe we wrote that in a way so that your vote would hold indefinitely unless a future land board told us otherwise. I'm looking at our council to ensure that that's true. Yes.
Understood. Okay. If there isn't any discussion or questions about that, Madam Treasurer, we'd be ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the land board delegate to the Department of State Lands Director the authority to, there's 3 points here, submit DSL's biennial agency request budget to the Department of Administrative Services, sign the Department of Administrative Services agency request budget certification page, and sign all required certification pages for the governor's recommended budget and legislatively adopted budget documents as instructed by the Department of Administrative Services.
Thank you. Treasurer Steiner moves approval of the recommendation and that the land board delegate to the director of the authorities as described by the treasurer. Is there a second?
I second.
Governor Kotek seconds. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none. Are there any objections to the motion? Hearing none. The motion is adopted. Thank you.
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you, Katie. I have one final update item before my director's update. This is just a quick informational item for you that back in actually when you adopted the Elliott State Research Forest transfer in 2022, it did not include a description of what is known as the Thousand Road in the legal description. In 2024, we discovered that error error, and in June of 2024, the land board voted to ensure that the Thousand Road was included in the decoupling of the Elliott State Research Forest from the Constitutional Common School Fund. However, at that time, we believed erroneously, as it turns out, that the Thousand Road parcel was included in the actual appraisal. That turned out not to be the case. And so today, we have made while we are waiting for a formal appraisal of the Thousand Road, we have made an initial payment based on that original appraisal amount to the Constitutional Common School Fund for the Thousand Road to officially decouple it from the Constitutional School Fund. And while we wait for the final appraisal, once we receive that, we will remedy and reconcile the estimated payment with the actual valuation and complete the transaction. So that will formally decouple the Thousand Road and include it in the Elliott State Research Forest as was originally intended in the 2022 and 2024 votes by this body. Thank you.
We'll get it right.
Third time is a charm. Finally, before I sign off and we adjourn, I wanted for the director's update to present one item, which is less of an item and more of a celebration. It is very fitting that this very last land board meeting for retired Deputy Director of Administration, Jean Straight, was full of budget items. You all scripted a 5-star onboarding experience for my first 30 days. It really was amazing, and it should be textbook for all future directors. You sent me into the field to visit staff, learn about DSL's work on the ground, meet with local electeds, customers, and tribal governments. But what you failed to do was provide instructions to staff to refrain from announcing any retirements during that time. Always attentive to detail, Jean saw that loophole and announced on my very first day where I was physically in the office that she was retiring at the end of the year. This still stands as my worst day on the job. Well, that announcement would be fine if I didn't like Jean, but not only did I like her, I quickly came to see how much I would rely on her. Jean was an indispensable voice in the room that brought reason, reality, practicality, honesty, and above all else, humor to every discussion. As the Deputy Director of Administration, she had a direct line of sight to the threads that tied these teams together and the common areas of challenge. I relied heavily on Jean's advice on where and how to strengthen those threads, find leverage and synergy to build and amplify DSL's strengths into one DSL. Jean came to DSL 8 years ago after a few stints at the Secretary of State and the Oregon Youth Authority. And I am sure she thought DSL would be a smooth ride into retirement. But in fact, those jobs were just mere proving grounds for her tenure. Behind the scenes, during her tenure here, Jean worked to secure the financial foundation for the Elliott State Research Forest, which is now on a path to financial self-sustainability in the next biennium, thanks in part to Jean's hard work. She created a home for the newly created Abandoned and Derelict Vessel program that you just heard about. She has incubated and grown a customer service culture in the support services team that she oversaw. And she initiated and launched the modernization of our IT system for permitting and finance, all while maintaining a sound fiscal oversight of the Common School Fund. I'm grateful to Jean for agreeing to stay on for 6 more months to support the agency through my first budget process here to onboard our new Deputy Director, Katie Hudson, who was up here with me a moment ago. Also from OYA, so 2 data points do make a trend. As Jean exits stage left, she is not pursued by bear, as Shakespeare would write, but rather carried by the herons, mergansers, and owls she worked to protect in her tireless support of DSL's mission. And she will be welcomed by the siren laugh of her grandchildren and soft cuddles of her puppy. We could not compete. So I'd like to take a moment to thank Jean Straight for her work and to present her with recognition from the Land Board.
Madam Director, just before we stand up, I'm sure the governor and the treasurer may want to say something as well, but I always feel strange saying it as the senior member of the land board. That is only a function of the fact that I've been here a little longer than the governor and the treasurer. But I can say certainly when we got here, it was a very different place. And so as you conclude, know that I, for one, am definitely grateful for all the changes that have happened, all the improvements, all the much advanced stability and consistency. These things all matter, and we're in a better spot because of what you've done. So add my thanks and associate myself with your very eloquent words, Director. Congratulations. Governor, Madam Treasurer, if either of you want to add anything, that'd be
I just want to say
time.
thank you, Jean. Thank you for your long service. Thank you for staying with us till the end of the year. And I wish you all the best in retirement. We so appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And I would just add now, having been an agency director of sorts myself for the better part of 18 months, I am all too aware of the importance of first class operating officers, deputies, the people who really provide the backbone for the day-to-day operations of agencies. And having someone like Jean as your partner, not in crime in this context, but in constructive agency motion, is not to be taken lightly, as clearly you have not director level. So I just want to thank you, Jean, for all of your hard work and tell you how much I appreciate it, even more than I would have appreciated it a year and a half ago. And we wish you all the best in retirement.
Now, before we applaud, maybe you could come up here. There's something that we have to hand you. It's not yet signed. It will be. But if you come up here, then the governor and the treasurer can see you too. And we can applaud. As far as they can see you.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. No, I don't want to say it. I appreciate all the comments. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gene. Madam Director, that completes our agenda, I think. Is that very good? Okay. Governor, Madam Treasurer, anything either of you would like to add? I don't see anything. Okay. Well, then I think we are ready to adjourn. Thanks, everyone. We will see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.